This is Justin.
And this is Haley, and you're listening to The Price of Avocado Toast.
We're a married millennial couple wanting to normalize conversations about money. We want to hear about your highs and your lows,
The do's and the don'ts on your path towards financial freedom. Hi Toasties, welcome to Price of Avocado Toast.
Whether you're a first-time listener or you've been following us from the start of this thing, we're so glad to have this conversation with you today.
Okay, we've done a little name change, and our podcast is now Price of Avocado Toast. We've ditched the.
Yes.
The. So it might take me a minute to not say the Price of Avocado Toast podcast. But anyway, new name, new me, same you.
And I think it's okay because a lot of people say things like, have you listened to the Friends on Fire podcast?
Right.
So people might say, have you listened to the Price of Avocado Toast podcast? I think it'll still be okay, and people can use the word the if they want, and it'll still make sense.
Yeah. Or you could just call us Pote, because you really wanted us to be Pote from the beginning.
Not like, I didn't want people to like walk around and say Pope, but it's just easier to like shorten it like that, you know? It's
the
just
Pote podcast.
Yeah, acronyms make things way easier in life.
You are a teacher. Okay, so what are we talking about today?
Well, today we're going to be talking about I guess that's kind of redundant. Today we're going to be talking on having conversations around money and your wages and salary in particular with your colleagues and your coworkers.
Very cool. I'm excited for this. I did a little thing on Instagram to see what people thought about this. You know, do we talk about money with colleagues? Do you even know what your colleagues make? Is there a salary discussion at all? And it was interesting because 56% of the people said that they do not talk with their colleagues about money, but that they knew the same amount of people. 56% also said that they know what their fellow coworkers make.
Interesting.
So I think the overarching thing is we are just a bunch of nosy Nancy's.
Yeah, well, clearly.
Clearly.
Which is fitting for our podcast. I mean, how many people tag you in Zillow things knowing that you'll go and snoop?
Yeah, well, now it's gotten to a point where every time I ask someone for their mailing address to send them a thank you card for coming onto our podcast, they are like, by the way, I paid this much for my house. Like, I promise I'm not going to Zillow it.
Well, hey, that's good, though. They obviously recognize they can have a comfortable conversation around money with you.
Yeah.
That's huge. So let me ask you, honey, have you ever had conversations around wages or salary with coworkers?
Yeah, because I'm hella nosy.
In what situation?
I mean, in all situations.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I always wanted to make more money, and I would find out what other people were making so I could ask for more money.
Interesting. I know that obviously for me, and I'm sure for you and many of the people who have waited tables or been servers, bartenders, you're always talking about money, right? You're always talking about, oh, this table tipped well, or, you know, whatever. And serving is such a cash job that you end up finding out. An interesting thing I did, though, when talking about health insurance at my previous job was I put my wages directly on, my salary at that point, directly onto Twitter. I just posted it to my Twitter feed and like, hey, this is what I'm paying for insurance for my family. This is what my paycheck as a teacher in California comes to at the end of the month. This is not sustainable.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people are like, whoa, that's a lot of money. And it certainly, I should say that's a lot of money being taken out of your paycheck.
Yeah.
And it certainly was. But that was one of the main times that I've ever talked to people. But those people were my colleagues, right? They were just people online, acquaintances and friends that I've made online.
Well, and a lot of the people that responded to the poll that I put on Instagram said, yeah, sure, I know what everyone's making because we're part of a union or we are government officials of some sort, and everyone gets paid the same amount based off of their years of service.
Yeah.
Just like we do as teachers. So I know that if someone has a master's degree and they've been working for 13 years, I can pull up exactly how much money they're making.
For sure.
And a lot of public employers work that same way. And I have an issue with, I don't know, I've always been the type of person that I work really hard and I want a lot of money. I work really hard for my money. So when I went to teaching, where it didn't matter how hard I worked, I got paid the exact same as everyone, and there was no room for a raise or anything. That really bothered me.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, everyone literally gets paid the same. I mean, I just remember there was a teacher who would show up 30 minutes late every day.
Yeah, that's
And
unacceptable.
they, because they'd been there longer, they made more money than me. And I was like, what the heck? This is not okay.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, too, that we also have different things that come out of our paycheck, right? Different
Mm-hmm.
things we're doing with that money. Obviously, as teachers, we have certain things in California that we're paying into, like our pension and stuff and taxes and everything. And I guess the way you structure your taxes, whether you're paying now or, when it comes tax season, that's one thing, right? But health insurance, changes your paycheck drastically, whether, you're a single employee or whether you're married or whatever your situation may be. Whether you're opting into the offered life insurance policy or extra disability payments, whatever, right? It can
Yeah.
always change your paycheck. So for me, even though you can go and look on the salary scale, I still think it's super important to have these conversations. Talking about the bottom dollar, well, this is what I'm taking home. And I think that there's some really important reasons as to why we should be talking about this with our colleague.
I recall having a conversation with another teacher one time where we talked exactly how much money we were taking home. And she was making way more money than I was, but she had the same amount, the same, I don't know, salary placement as me.
Mm-hmm.
But she opted for getting paid 10 months instead of 12. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, those are what the real numbers would look like if you didn't have summer pay.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff like that. So those are the things that do come up when you have those conversations. Instead of, yeah, sure, on paper it looks like you're making $5,000-$6,000 a month, but that's definitely not the case
Yeah, for
when
sure.
it's said and done.
Mm-hmm. And I think I'm most excited for this episode because while we are kind of talking about what we think are the top 3 reasons, I think that they can offshoot into so many other important reasons as to why people should be talking with their colleagues about their money. Kind of like an honorable mention here that didn't make the list. If you're talking about this money and you all live in the same area, you can really start to identify some of the socioeconomic issues in your community,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I only make this much each month and I know that the housing market looks like this, well, you can really get a good insight into what's going on in your community and again, maybe the sustainability or not so much sustainability of the wage scale and the salary scale.
Definitely. So the first reason we think that you should talk to your coworkers about money is that it destigmatizes conversations about money. This is the core mission of our podcast and our brand.
Yeah.
We want to normalize conversations about money with everyone, with your friends, your family, your coworkers. If we talk about it and it's a normal thing, then it's not some taboo conversation. And then it's not going to feel inappropriate if you ask someone how much they're taking home or if you just engage in a conversation about finances.
Yeah. I pulled up an article written in July of 2020 by Chron.com, Chron, Chron.com. And it's titled, Can You Tell Coworkers Your Salary? And it's interesting because it's actually part of labor law that managers and, top, level employers cannot restrict employees from talking about their wages or salary with one another. It's part of U.S. labor law. But it's really interesting because this article talks about reasons not to discuss pay. And the very first one they say is it might create problems. And the discussion could badly damage the morale and teamwork in your workplace.
I
And
don't know, man.
yeah, I totally would argue the other way around. If you can
Yeah.
have these transparent conversations, then I don't see how it's going to tank morale, right? At the end of the day, the hope is that we're all part of this team together, and there are other things you do to strengthen the team than hide your salaries from one another, right? Like that's not what a team does. A team is transparent, and a team is honest and committed and dedicated. So I took like huge gripes with that because I don't agree with that at all.
I don't either.
I think it's important that we have these conversations in the workplace, and I don't think it affects morale. Again, I think if you're honest with one another, right? If you and I are both employees for a company, why am I going to be upset with you that you're getting paid a certain rate and I'm getting paid a certain rate? I wouldn't be upset with you. I'd be upset with the person that hired me.
Yeah.
Or I'd be upset with the person who isn't, the person who's not fairly compensating me, right? Like that's who I'm going to be upset with. You have no control. You don't write my checks. You don't sign my checks,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that that's important, and it helps destigmatize that. And again, like I was talking about, the honorable mention, when you have these conversations, I think you're actually building camaraderie. If I knew what you're taking home, and I know that you're the sole earner for your family, and you've got children with particular needs, or you've got childcare costs, or you've got all these things going on, and I hear what you're taking home, I'm going to be more empathetic to your situation. I might want to see how I can help you, maybe not financially, but in ways to make your life easier in the workplace, in ways to pick up a task for you so you can leave 30 minutes early to get your kid or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I just think that when we have those conversations, we're clued in to what's going on in our community, and that's important. It's really important.
I agree.
But I know I probably sound like I'm just like super invested in this because I am. It's really important to me. But I think that millennials can change the tide on this. We can be the ones to say, no, we do talk about money in the workplace. This is no longer taboo. Because I'm sure that for our parents and our grandparents' generation, it was just not the way it was. You didn't talk about those things. It was not accepted in the workplace.
But we've already turned perspectives on so many different things. And one of them that I think of off the top of my head is mental health.
For sure.
Our parents and grandparents didn't talk about things. They said very inappropriate things about people who had anything neurologically different about them. But that was because they didn't know better, and it just was not talked about in the way we talk about it now. So if we can flip the switch on money, shut it down.
Yeah, I agree. It's so interesting when you talk about, our parents and grandparents and the mental health stigmas. And like you said, they didn't know any better. And it was just the way the world was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think to like spankings and like corporal punishment, right? Where we're like, people nowadays would be like, well, my parents hit me with a switch and I turned out great. And it's like, you are investing thousands into therapy monthly. I don't know if I would say that the switch was really a benefit, It's, I think therapy's awesome. And I would invest in therapy 10 times over because it's so important. But that always makes me laugh when people are like, I got beat and I turned out awesome. And you're like, I just don't, it's not a great, argument for it all. But anyways, yeah, I agree with you. Millennials are changing the conversation around a lot of things. And I'm hoping that money in the workplace can be one of them because it's really important.
I think it is. And with all of you listening, you're listening to this podcast because you want to normalize conversations about money.
Yes.
So take this and do something with it. Go have a conversation with someone this week.
Yes. That is an incredible tie-in to our second point.
What's the second point,
Oh my gosh.
Justin?
Okay, so the second point is when you talk about wages in the workplace, you're also talking about and kind of subconsciously advocating for pay equity. And this is huge as the social justice movements slowly start to grow and gain traction in our world. We need people in all situations to be allies. And the Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our communities are traditionally underpaid for their positions, comparatively speaking to white people, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all know that. That's not a figure that's surprising to anybody. We've all heard that plenty of times. We've heard the rates around women in the workplace. We've heard all of these things. And having these conversations is wildly, wildly important. And I get an email each morning from Anti-Racism Daily, and it's awesome. I read it every single morning. And I drink my coffee and I read it, and I just love it. I get the email, and it's wonderful. It's like a 10-minute read max. It's just great. And this morning, I got an email, and it's talking about pay equity. And one of the really cool things that I like is even before it goes into the article, and the article was written by Nicole Cardoza, and before it even goes into Miss Cardoza's article, it gives you action steps. That's the top thing in the email, is it gives you action steps. And the first key takeaway action step is to tell them how much you make, and it encourages them to do the same because it helps marginalized backgrounds in demanding equal pay. The second thing that you can do is insist that your company publicly announce the minimum and maximum pay for each position, and if you're in management, to take action to institute this change yourself. And I love that because even before it goes in the article documenting all these things, we have clear action steps of what we can do. So like you told our listeners, you're listening to this now, have these conversations. The second point says the exact same thing. You are listening to this podcast for a reason. You need to be having these conversations. It's a non-negotiable. You must be talking about money in the workplace.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry,
Yeah,
I know
mic drop.
I'm so fiery about this, but it's just so important to me. It's massively important to me.
It's so important. And like you said, we know that women don't get paid as much as men. But we've seen salaries get published and people do research and find out, whoa, the same person with the same credentials and experience as me who happens to have a penis is making way more money than I am. And then they can publicly negotiate and say, hey, Joe Schmo's making more money. Let me make more money.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that's forgotten. When we just talk about male and female differences in wages, we know that women make 77 cents to the dollar, but we're not talking about the people of color that are making significantly less than that. So yes, everyone knows women make less than men, but black women make 64 cents on the dollar. That's almost like half. And Hispanic women make 56 cents on the dollar. And we need to have these conversations to amplify the voices of the people who are not getting paid how they should be.
Absolutely agree. One of the first acts, I think actually the first act signed into law, or bill, I should say, by President Obama in 2009 was the Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. And Ogletree.com, Ogletree is spelled O-G-L-E, tree. Ogletree.com is quoted as saying that the act requires employers to redouble their efforts to ensure that their pay practices are non-discriminatory and to make certain that they keep the records needed to prove the fairness of pay decisions. And it kind of has been shown that really what it did was gave people an opportunity to fight discrimination in the workplace due to this fair pay. And the important thing about all this is that we wouldn't understand or know these things if coworkers didn't have these conversations. Right? Like that is what it all comes back to. People keep things inside and we don't have these conversations and nobody finds out. And then people that we care about are getting screwed over. It's really important. And especially the people who are listening that are white. If you want to be an ally, these are things you simply have to do. It's a non-negotiable. You have to have these conversations so that others know that you are paying attention and worried about making it fair for all.
Yeah. Your black and brown friends deserve to be paid just as much as the white man.
Yes.
And we will continue to let companies do what they've been doing for generations if we stay silent.
There's like all those times too that we've seen, like a white person applies for a job and a black person applies for a job and has like maybe a traditionally black name, right? And then they don't get that job, and they've like run studies where they just change that human's name to a white passing name with the exact same qualifications, and they get an interview or a callback or whatever, right? And so it just shows you that hiring practices are discriminatory. Fair pay practices are oftentimes discriminatory still as well. And it's important that we all are allies and activists in fighting for change.
I'm so happy I'm married to someone like you.
I try my best, honey. I really try my best.
No, you really do.
It's just it's so important to me, and maybe it's important to me because I like to think that I'm learning how to be a better ally and like learning how to kind of like check myself because I've failed a lot in like how to be a better ally and like my own personal white fragility and like non-confrontational self. I've failed more often than I've succeeded at it. But this is one of those things that like if I have a freaking podcast about money, like I need to use our platform for you and I to like get our listeners to try and change this.
Right. I love that.
So anyways, I want to go back to Anti-Racism Daily. I love this, and I thought the article was awesome today, and I just think it's incredible. I really encourage people to sign up for it. So I want to put the link into the show notes as well. We'll put it on Instagram. We'll put it in the show notes. You can click the link that we'll post, and you just go and like sign up in your email right there. Like it's super easy. And it's just you get it every single morning. You cannot beat it. It's incredible.
And it's really short and simple.
Yeah, it's just great. Absolutely great.
Like you said, it's a short read. Okay, so we're going back to the 3 reasons why you should talk to your coworkers about money. The first reason was it really just normalizes these conversations. We're going to destigmatize things and make this a normal conversation that's not so taboo. The second reason was that, we have equity issues. And when we talk about money and we know how much money people are making, then we can hopefully break down the barriers there. And the third and final reason that we think you should talk to your coworkers about money is that it helps you identify your value in the marketplace. And what this means is that if you know what other people are making and you know what you're making, then you can make a great assumption that you might not be getting paid what you're worth.
Yeah, and it's comparable, obviously.
Right.
If you're a manager and I'm an employee under you, one would assume that you're going to make more money than me. And
Right.
that's, classic corporate structure. We're all okay with that. My administrator's job is, I would say way more difficult than mine, but teaching is interesting. It's different, right?
Yeah.
I personally think it's difficult, but more difficult than my job. But I know other educators who might argue that. I wouldn't. I think my admin's job is a nightmare right now due to COVID, and I don't want that at all. But I also know that she's been in administration for over 20 years and in education for like 10 years prior to that. So she deserves to be paid more, right? Like I get that structure. We're talking about comparable jobs.
Right.
And, comparable employees in years of service, whatever position you're at,
your
right?
education, credentials, experience, time, not just your experience in general, but time with that employer.
Yes, exactly.
Your seniority, all of that taken into consideration. When you find someone that is around your same level of everything, then you can really identify your value in the marketplace and make negotiations. It goes back to the equity. Then you can see, like, okay, I'm not being paid what I should be. Now I'm going to take this information and take it to someone who has some power to pay me more money.
Yeah.
And I have negotiated for higher wages on several accounts, and it's very awkward conversation. It's very uncomfortable, but you gain confidence every time you do it.
How did you start those conversations?
Well, really nervously, I just sit there and like twiddle my hands and be like, "Hey, so I have like lots of bills, and I'm gonna have to get a second job if I keep working here. So I'd really like to not have a second job. So could you pay me more?" And I mean, I got like $1 or $2 of a raise, or they would give me some sort of a promotion, which came with a raise. But yeah, it's a really awkward conversation. But I do think that if this was more normal, it wouldn't be so awkward.
I think that you can have those conversations too and frame it in a way that is asking for feedback or a healthy critique, right? You can say, "Hey, I'd like to have a review of my performance. I'm interested in getting some feedback so I know what I can do to rise in the company," or something like that, right? To where if you're getting eyes on you and you feel like your value is higher, then, maybe when they break down the performance, you can say, "Hey, you've given me a, really good mark here, and you've stated you're really impressed with how I've done. I've checked the value of my role in the marketplace, and I'm a little bit underpaid, and I'd like to discuss maybe raising my salary a bit, or I'd like to discuss ways that the company and I can work together to, give me higher wages." Whatever you need to say, right? Like, I think you could do that.
And having been in management before, if they want to keep you and you speak like that and you come from a place of confidence, not being cocky, but confidence, and you know that you're being underpaid, that means they know you're looking elsewhere. If they want to keep you, they will try their best to do something to negotiate.
There you go. Look at that.
They don't want you looking elsewhere.
No.
If they do want to keep you around and they have the money, the funds to do so, then hopefully you're working for an employer that's going to do something. In teaching, they can't do that.
No.
There's no room for negotiation.
Nope.
So anyone that's in a position where you're a union person or on a salary schedule, this is a little different because you don't have wiggle room. But you can still continue to normalize these conversations about money, about your take-home pay, about everything. And this goes far and wide with everything. I mean, normalize how much you're paying for insurance. Like, all of those things have to do with your money. And someone might have a different suggestion that you never even knew about.
I like that. That's a good one. I think it's important to mention. I read an article. I think it was this morning. Yeah, it was this morning, and I think it kind of spawned off of reading the anti-racism daily thing that was talking about how fewer people are returning to the workplace right now, and it's not because they, are doing well off or whatever, or the COVID stimulus funds have got them on, and lasted of a year. But it's because they're recognizing that the pay scale for what they're being asked to do isn't comparable. It doesn't provide the value for what they provide into the marketplace. And we've seen that with people posting, fake, or maybe not even fake. These are probably true Indeed job postings where somebody's like, we want a master's degree and all this experience, and we'll pay you $16 an hour. You are out of your mind if you think you are going to find a master's degree level employee that feels that $16 is their true value. Now, they might take that position for whatever circumstances they have in life. And I ain't here to judge anybody that's going through that, right? I was a server with a master's degree. I'm not hating on that. But you can't tell me that that's the value of a master's degree nowadays. You can't tell somebody they should go into debt. Student loan debt is an entirely different conversation here. But you can't tell somebody they should go into debt if they're going to be making $16 an hour on the back end, because that's what you believe their value is. And so people aren't taking those jobs. And then we see people saying, well, nobody wants to go back to work because of, all. No. You won't pay a fair wage. Your top level CEOs or officers are making bank on the backs of minimum wage employees, and people are over it. They're over it. Life is too short. It's just another really interesting part of identifying your value in the marketplace.
Yeah. I firmly believe, and some business owner listening is going to hate me for saying this, but I firmly believe that if you can't get people to work for you, you're not paying them enough money. You're not paying people enough money to even want to work there if you can't get people to work there or want to work there.
Money and leadership, those are the two number one things. People don't leave jobs. They leave money or they leave leaders. Those are the issues. I'm either going to more money or I'm going to a better leader. I truly believe that's what it is, right? I mean, look, I left Guerneville. I loved my administration down there, but we made a financial decision to move up here. I truly believe that's what drives most people from jobs, money or leadership.
Yeah. Or they've got some creepy ex-boyfriend or girlfriend that lurks and stalks them. That'd be weird.
Did that happen to you?
No.
Oh, you're just saying. Well, I certainly think people do that too. But then let's talk about leadership. Leadership should be like, you need to back off my employee.
Yeah.
You better stop harassing my employees.
Yeah.
But
totally.
I don't know. Well, thanks for having this conversation, honey. This is one that, is just a lot of fun to talk about. And I hope that some of our listeners actually do these action steps. You should have a conversation literally today. If you're listening to this, we have people on the East Coast that listen to this before we even wake up. You and I are asleep, just hanging out. I get up, I'm drinking my coffee, and I see that we're starting to get hit up on Instagram.
We're definitely not hanging out when we're sleeping.
Well, I'm hanging out in the living room. I'm saying when I wake up, having my coffee.
Oh, gotcha.
I see people on Instagram, though, already tagging us, like, listen to the episode. I'm going to tell them, you're listening to it at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. You should be having that conversation that day with your coworker. Hey, I listened to this really cool podcast called Price of Avocado Toast. They told me to ask you how much you make. I'm going to tell you first, and then I hope you share as well. I don't know.
Yeah, do it. And I'm going to take this opportunity because you just said share. It's like hugely helpful when you share our episode on your Instagram or send it to a friend. That's how it spreads the word that we exist. More people will listen, then they come back week after week. Our numbers continue to grow, and then we can continue to keep doing this for you guys. You know, we've said before, we're not here just trying to get 5 million downloads or anything, but it does help us spread the word.
Yeah.
And that's all we want to do. We just want to help people. And we want to normalize conversations about money. I don't know how many times I need to say that. But that is what truly helps us. You know,
Yeah.
people say, like, as small businesses, you could do this to help us. What you can do for us is come back, share with your friend, leave a review, all that fun stuff. It's seriously really, really helpful.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things about growing the podcast, obviously we don't have ad revenue, so we're not getting money for this. But by growing the podcast and growing our following, when we put out calls for help to people on Instagram, like we did last week with the student's family, people show up and they help. And it may not be a lot, but it's a little bit. And we were able to, donate $260 to that family from the Toasties and us. Like, it just felt really good for the community to kind of come together and help some people. And the more people that follow our Instagram, the more people that are going to see eyes on those things where we can try and help others and make the world a little bit better of a place.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Love that. I love this podcast, and I love all of you listening. Man, I'm so glad we decided to do this.
Me too. That's going to do it for this episode of Price of Avocado Toast podcast. As always, we're so thankful to have had this conversation with you, and we are so grateful to talk to you about what we get paid and our salary scales, and we hope you go and do the same with your coworkers. Happy budgeting.
You've got this, Toasties.
Thanks for listening to the Price of Avocado Toast. If you vibed with this episode, share it with a friend that you're comfortable having money talks with. And if you don't mind, we'd love if you could rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you're in need of my support as a financial coach, message me on Instagram. I'd love to help in any way that I can. Until next time.